All right, so I used the warm-ups today to refresh your memory on stuff you hopefully knew already. Mean, median, mode, and range. So how do you guys find the mean of a set of numbers? It's the average, which means what?
You add them all up and divide by how many there are, which is 1,
You
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
add them up and divide by how many there are. So what did you guys get?
22.
Hopefully you got 22. All right. Then the median is which one? The middle. What's the middle number? 20. And the mode is
24.
the one that happens most often. That's 24. And then to find the range? Take the highest, subtract the lowest. Okay, so 32 minus 14, so 18. Okay, we did okay on that? Awesome. All right, so today we're going to take a look at measures of central tendency and measures of dispersion. These are things that have to do with statistics. And all statistics is they are numerical values that are used to summarize and compare data sets. So we use mean, median, mode, range, standard deviation so that we can compare different data sets to each other. Numerical values to summarize and compare data sets. So we already talked about the measures of central tendency, and you guys already know them. They're the mean, median, and the mode. And so the only thing that might be a little new to you guys is this little symbol here, the X with the bar over it, and we just call it X bar. And so that is the mean. And what's the word that we usually use when we're talking about finding the mean? The average, yeah. Okay. So we add them all up and divide by how many there are. So do you really need to write the equation for your notes? Probably not, yeah. All right, and then we said that the median was what? It was the middle value. And what do I do if I have an even number of data points? Add what up and divide by 2? Take the 2 middle ones, right. So if you have an even number of data points, then you average the 2 middle ones. And then finally the mode was the one that occurs most often. All right, so we've got a couple of data sets here, and you guys actually already found the mean, median, mode for that first one, because that's where those numbers came from. All right, so we already found the mean, median, and mode for Office A. So let's just go ahead and write that one down. And then I want you guys to go ahead and compute for Office B. So we already had 22, 20, and 24. You guys figure out what it is for Office B. All right, so what'd you guys get for the mean? 16. And the median? 18. And the mode? Also 18. Okay. So, any problems on doing those problems? You guys remember how to do that pretty much? Okay. So those are our measures of central tendency. The other thing we're going to look at are measures of dispersion. So when something is dispersed, that means it's spread out. So what I'm looking at is how spread out is the data. The range is pretty easy to find. What did you guys do to find the range?
The first and last one.
Right, so you took the biggest number, right? And you subtracted the smallest number. Pretty straightforward. We already found the range for Office A, which was 32 minus 14, or 18. And so what's the range for Office B going to be?
11.
Well, the biggest number is 23, and the smallest number is 8, so that comes out to 15, yes. Okay, so that's all review stuff. The main thing that's new is standard deviation. So standard deviation, we're involved with the mean. What I want to know basically is, on average, how far is the data from the mean? Okay, so as a whole, how far is the data from the mean? So this funny little circle with a tail on top is called sigma. It's a lowercase sigma from the Greek alphabet. And we use that to represent the standard deviation. And so it looks complicated, but it really isn't. All we're doing is we're seeing how far it is, each data point is from the mean. So I take my first data point and I subtract the mean. So for instance, looking at this one up here where we had that the mean was equal to 22, I would just be saying, okay, how far is 14 from 22? How far is it? It's 8, right? And then I square it and I get 64. And then I would go on to the next one. All right, how far is 17 from 22?
5.
It's 5. I square it. And so on until I get to the end of my list. Okay? That's all standard deviation is. So it looks like it's really complicated, but it's actually mostly punching a bunch of numbers in your calculator. And just in case this word pops up, variance is just sigma squared. So basically it's that whole thing without the square root over it. All right, so let's figure out the standard deviation using these same two data sets again. First, we'll find the standard deviation for Office A. So I'm going to write it out showing all the steps. However, on your homework, I know that probably the first 2 steps you can do in your head, and I'm fine with that, but you do need to show me at least the last step and what's going in your calculator. So let's take a look at this. All right. So my standard deviation, my mean we said was 22 for that first set. So I'm taking 14 minus 22 and then I'm going to square it. Then I'm taking 17 minus 22 and I'm going to square it. Then I take 18 minus 22 and I square it, etc. until I get to the end of my list, 32 minus 22, and I square it. And then that's divided by how many data points I have, which in this case is 9. Okay? So I'm not expecting you guys to write that out when you actually do your homework. You can do that part in your head, right? Okay, so if I go through my list then, the 14 minus 22 comes out to -8, and I square that. 17 minus 22 is -5, and I square that. 18 minus 22 is -4, and I square that. Do I really care about the negatives if I'm squaring it? No. So really, I can just go through, okay, 19 to 22, that's 3. 20 to 22, that's 2. 24 to 22, that's 2. Another 24 to 22 is 2. 30 to 22 is a difference of 8. And 32 to 22 is a difference of 10. All divided by 9. So as you get more comfortable with this, you'll probably just write this step right here. where you just look at it and figure out what it is squared. So we'd have 64 plus 25 plus 16 plus 9 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 64 plus 100, all divided by 9. So I heard some people pick up their calculators. The rest of you pick up your calculators. And let's see what it adds up to. All right, yeah, it adds up to 290, and then we divide that by 9. And so when you take the square root of that, it comes out to about 5.676. All right, so now you guys are going to do the standard deviation for Office B. I'm going to let you guys do that by yourself this time, instead of me walking you through it. So what was the mean for Office B? 16. So make sure you're using 16 for those points. Don't use 22 anymore. Now we're looking at 16 being the average and using those data points.
0 squared.
By the way, the reason I want you guys to at least write that last step where the squares are in your notes is because if you just write an answer, I'm not going to know what you put in your calculator. So I won't know if you did everything right, but you just didn't punch it right in your calculator, or if you made a mistake somewhere, if you forgot to square them, or if you forgot to, or if you just subtracted wrong, okay? So I need you guys to show me where, at a minimum, I need to have this much work showing in your homework, okay? All right, so I think everybody was getting that. Basically, yes, like I said before, I want to have at least that much work showing on your homework pages. So when you add it all up and take the square root and everything, 4.497 was the answer. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about are outliers. Outliers, it's kind of like what it sounds like. It's a value that lies outside of most of the data. A value that lies outside of most of the data. So either it's much smaller or much larger than the rest of the data. Okay, so we're going to use this data set here, 14, 15, 15, 17, 11, 15, 13, 12, 15, 13. But before I can use that data, what do I have to do to it? It needs to be in order from the least to the greatest, yes. So put it in order. All right, so what is it in order?
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 15.
Okay, 11, 12, did you have two 13s? Hopefully, 14, and then there were 4 of the 15s, and 17. Okay, so if I want to find the mean, median, and mode for that, what's the mode? That's pretty obvious. 15. And when I'm looking at the median, this one's an even set of numbers, so what are we going to have to do? Right, or go halfway between 14 and 15, which is 14 and a half. All right. And the mean, I'm going to add them all up and divide by 10 this time because there's 10 of them. So if you add them up, you should get 140. And so the mean comes out to 14. The range is what? Just 6, yeah, 17 minus 11. All right, so now we're going to find the standard deviation. So my mean is 14, so I'm just going to be looking at the distance from 14 to each of the data points. So 11 to 14 is 3, and I square that, I get 9. 12 to 14 is 2, I square that, and I get 4. 13 to 14 is 1, squared is still 1, 1. 14 is 0. The distance to 15 is 1, and squared it's still a 1. And then 17 to 14 is a distance of 3, square it and you get 9. All over 10, because I have 10 data points. So if we add them up, 9 and 4 is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 9 is 28. And so it comes out to about 1.673. So do I have any outliers in that data? No. It's all pretty close together there. Well, I'm going to add an outlier in and see what happens to my mean, median, mode, range, and standard deviation if I add a 3 to my data set. So I'm going to have you guys figure out my new mean, median, mode, range, and standard deviation. All right, so what is my mean now? Now it's 13, my median, 14, and my mode, 15. The range, 14. And are you guys still working on standard deviation? No, some of you got that already? Okay, well, let me write it down just to make sure. Okay, so we had 10 squared, well, I'll just like 100. So we would have had 100 plus 4 plus 1 plus 1 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 16. I think that's all of them. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I didn't count the 2 zeros in there. Yeah. So we have a total of 11. So that adds up to 138, doesn't it? Okay. So notice I didn't write down my zeros, but I still have to count that I had 11 data points. Okay, so be careful. Don't let the ones that are the exact same mess you up with those zeros. Okay. All right, so then when you put that into your calculator, it should have come out to about 3.54. Okay, so which measure of central tendency was affected the most? Those are just mean, median, mode. Which one was affected the most? Mean, median, or mode? The mean was affected the most, yes. And which one was affected the least? Did the mode change at all? No, the mode didn't change at all. So the mode's affected the least. Basically, unless I add a whole bunch of outliers that are the same thing, my mode's going to still be the same thing. All right, what about what effect did the outlier have on the range and the standard deviation? It made both of them bigger, didn't it? And so it's the larger number because the data is more spread out. So your range and your standard deviation talk about the spread of the data. It made them both larger because now it's more spread out. Okay? So any questions about anything we covered here today? No? All right, that's it for today then.